Hey, I really appreciate you guys joining us. My name's Frank Bunker. I've probably met most of you. If not, welcome. And let's just talk a little bit about today's session. So I'm going to cover, in general, what's in 6.9, at least the major points that I think are relevant, either from a functional or a user experience standpoint. There's really two main things I want to talk about. One is there's a new feature for exporting to Excel much more quickly, and then there's a new way to manage measures. So that's something that's available in 6.9 as well. Just FYI, 6.9 is in general availability. You can find out a lot about 6.9 by going to CustomerNet. If you were to go over and bring up CustomerNet, you can go to sylvan.com and get here, or you can go directly to CustomerNet at sylvan.com. And then all you need to do is you can come over here, and it's down here. You'll see there's an announcement for 6.9. You can click here, and this will lead you to information about 6.9. If you're already upgraded to 6.9, you can see what's new here. So over here on the home page, you can see here, I'll just click, and this brings up the What's New document. These What New documents. There was also an email blast about this. If you're not getting emails from Sylvan, just let us know, and we'll get you on the list to get this stuff. But you can see here are the things that were new in 6.9, and we're going to talk about exporting data with Excel. We're also going to talk about the new measure window, and then a couple other smaller things that were done, in particular some stuff that was done in the View Explorer to help you with just selecting multiple things in the View Explorer. So we're going to talk about those things. Let's see. To get started, I think what I'll talk about first is, and then after that, I was going to talk a little bit about our overall product direction. So what are we working on now in 7.0 and what's beyond that, and just talk a little bit about what Sylvan's focused on right now, what our focus has been, and how that focus is shifting just a little bit in terms of some of the things we're working on in Stratum, and I thought I'd share that with you as well. So with that in mind, I've already said I'm going to focus on these things, and we'll get into some of that stuff. With that, one of the first things is if you were to look at exporting data to Excel, we took an approach on this where we've had the request from people to be able to export very, very large sets of information that aren't really used to look at them as, say, an Excel report, to use it more as Excel data. And that's something that, based on feedback from our customer base, that we went ahead and provided. And to do that, you need to have what's our broadcast server option. It's built on some of the technology within there. So to get to a high-speed export, you need to do that. And in fact, there was a post in the forum on this. So if I go out to our forum and I look on CustomerNet here, I'll just go to the customer forum real quick. What you'll find is a post. I think if I search on, this is zoomed in, which is kind of weird. Let's see here. Let me go back to 100%. So yeah, I'll search. I think if you go out here and search on Excel, you'll find a post that I put out here concerning Excel and how to the kinds of things that you'll want to do to get the absolute best response when you're exporting to Excel. And there's a number of suggestions in this post. I'm going to show this to you in Stratum in just a second. But for reference, you can come back out here. All the stuff I talk about today, you'll be able to see here. There's some other great information out here if you guys ever peruse the forum, because you've got nothing else to do than peruse a forum concerning Stratum. But let me talk about some of these points and how I would set up to export a very large set of data in Stratum. So I'm going to go into Stratum here. What I'm going to do this totally from scratch, so you guys can see how I build the view and things like that. And I'm just going to go in and I'm going to create a new view in Stratum. So this gives me a blank page. And from there, I'm going to go ahead and start selecting stuff. And let's say I want to get all the orders for the last couple of years by month for all the customers. Let's say that's my objective, and I'm trying to output that data for a number of reasons. And there could be a number of reasons why you want to output, say, 100,000 or 200,000 records, and that might be to use them in maybe you're comfortable in Excel and you want to do some kind of pivot there, or you want to mash it up with some other data. Maybe one of the things that we've been focused on, and what you'll see, and one of the reasons we might do something like this, is if you want to set up, say, a scheduled export so you can use data in something like Microsoft's Power BI, so you could see data in other forms other than in the Stratum form. So you can see that. So a lot of reasons you might export really large sets of data, and when I say large sets of data, I mean 50, 100, 200, 300,000, those kinds of numbers in terms of rows. When I think of what we do today, our terminology for exporting to Excel is what we call Excel reports, where it includes all your formatting, your graphs if you have them, the charts that are included, all the traffic lighting, conditional formats that you may add. All that stuff is exported to Excel, and all that takes time. What we've done with this Excel data export option is we've added the ability for you to, say, strip out all the formatting, don't have any of that, just get me the data out into a raw data sheet, and then you can take advantage of that. And to do that, I'm going to go in and I'm going to add some rows here. So for those of you, I'm just going to use some of the new features. This is not 6.9. This was added a little while ago, but I want to get stuff by, let's see, I'm going to do this by customer sold to. I think I'll do sold to. Oops, let's see. I'm going to select the sold to. I need the order number. I'm going to go down to the order number level. I want to get, I'll get some product data, so I'll get the brand and the product. The other thing I should have done first, I'm going to actually do this without time ranges. So I'm going to do this where I can include the year and stuff. So again, I wanted the customer sold to. I wanted the order number, right? Want the order number. Wanted some product stuff. I'll do the product and the brand, and I also wanted to get this by year and month. I'll go down and just select the absolute years and months. So I'll select year month. So I just say OK. And that, of course, brings in all those dimensions. I want to reorder this a little bit. I think I want customer sold to. I want to put year and months next. Then I want to go from there, and I want the brand. I'll go to order number, but then I want the brand and the product. So that gets me those things into my view. Now I need to get my measures. I can go over here. I'll just add a couple measures. I'm going to just get some basic sales measures. I'll get, I'll get the cost, I'll get the amount, and I'll get the units. So I'm just selecting this stuff and saying OK. So now I'll have that. So I've got all that data. Now the other thing I want to do is I'm going to drill down to the year here. Let's go back. One of the things you'll see in that forum post I talked about, if I'm exporting to Excel and I want this to go as quickly as possible and use the new functionality, a couple of things you'll want to do to make the view itself, as you're looking at the view before you extract to Excel. Now, just so you're aware, if you're using the broadcast server, there's an option when you create on the action to also select an Excel data versus an Excel report, and you can do this there as well, and then it will export for you. But I'm going to turn off all the stuff that actually takes us time to create in HTML and get that back to you. So I'm going to turn off locking rows and columns, and I'm going to turn off totaling. So we don't need that because I'm just trying to get raw data out to Excel. Now, the other thing, if you've been doing this in the past, you might have said you include repeat item labels. If you're going to export using our new Excel data feature, which I can select right here in the middle of the screen, you can see that. You don't need to worry about the repeat item labels. It will do that automatically. So I'm going to select this as Excel data and say OK. So now I'm going to go ahead and drill down. And one of the things I want to do is I want to filter the year just get the last couple of years. So I'm going to come in here in my demo. The current year is still 2017. So I'm going to grab that in 2016, say OK. And now I'm filtered. And you can see a new feature in 6.9, the filter icon here turned red to indicate at somewhere in Stratum there's a filter that's been applied, and you can see, so you're looking at filtered data right now. Now I'm just going to continue to drill down here so I get all of the data out. for this thing. So you can see that just got me that's 546. I'm sure here when I go to order number, this will be a lot more data at this point. So I'm going to drill down. That got me like 115,000 things. So this will be relatively large when I export. And we all know if you were exporting this as an Excel report, this would take quite some time to do. So this would be running, and I don't know how long it would run, but it run a long time exporting over 100,000 rows here. But I'm going to go ahead and export this, and this will just take, it tells me it's going to be big. So I say yes. That's going to run for just a couple minutes. While that's running, I wanted to show you something else to set up the next thing that I'm going to do in Stratum, and that was the idea of using the new measure window to set up a view, and I'm going to add some measures, and I'm going to use some features in the new measure central, or the measure window that we've put together, and take advantage of those. And this is interesting enough. This was just something a customer I started talking about with a customer about how you want to put together a customer scorecard, and they wanted to see customer sales year to date. This is what they want to see on the scorecard. This is what you're going to need in Stratum to do some of this stuff. So they wanted the customer and the rep just to display, but then they wanted to see customer year-to-date sales, what percentage that customer was of the overall company sales. And to do that, I got to get customer sales, get the company number, the sales, and a percentage calculation that just shows me the delta of those things. So with that, I also wanted to see the same kind of data for the margin and the same kind of data for the order count. So I'm going to do this today. I'm going to set this up and the order counts where I'm going to look at the customer year-to-date sales, and then I need the company total. So that's kind of a tricky calculation in Stratum that I'm going to show you using the new measure window, and then I need to set up the percentage calculation, and then I'll do the same thing for order count so you guys can see how we would do that. Now, in the meantime, to continue our story back on the Excel import, I'm assuming that's probably done. Yep, there we go. So that 100,000 was just exported into Excel, and you can see that here. I'm going to bring up that Excel export I just did. So that was 100 and whatever it was, 15,000 rows or something like that, and I'll pump this up so you guys can see it a little bit. But what you'll see here is here's all the data. You'll see the repeating rows automatically did its thing. So it stuck all the data. It filled in all the columns. And then when I say the data is unformatted, I'm going to go out here and note that this stuff, where the measures are, there's no formatting on these numbers. They just came out as, with however many decimal places we had stored in Stratum for that stuff. So they're raw numbers, and there's no formatting on them. That's how the new Excel export works. It works very nicely with large data sets, and really it is a great thing if you're using either ad hoc like I just showed you, or if you're using actions. So if you're using actions in Stratum, you now have the option to go ahead and say, I want to do an Excel export. That does require the broadcast server. If, in fact, you guys want to see how this works and you're not a broadcast server owner, you can certainly trial the broadcast server. We can give you a code that'll put it out there for like 60 days for you to play with, and you can do that, and you can try this new Excel export if you're interested, and just contact us, and we can do that for you. So. And the kinds of things that does, as I mentioned, that gives me very large data sets, which obviously you can use in Excel. That would, I hope, be obvious by the fact we export it to Excel. But I could also take that Excel data, and that's kind of an input for a lot of things. It might be an input for something like maybe you want to do things in Power BI where you're getting graphs and visualizations that look like this with your data, or maybe something like this where I've exported, in this case, a bunch of inventory and sales data, and now I can go in here and I can set up stuff to select things. And so this is all stuff you can do starting with Stratum and leveraging what you have in Stratum, and then moving into using some other tools, or just getting the data out into Excel for use in Excel. So that was a view from scratch with the Excel. Now I want to talk a little bit about the new measure window and how that might work. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead and use that scorecard example that I showed. And again, I'm just going to create a new view. So I'll go ahead and I'll just say new view. Again, starting from scratch. So I'm starting completely from scratch. And let's say we know in that example what I wanted to do. I think I had in the columns. I think here I'll go ahead and I'll get the customer. So I'm going to want the customer here. I want the customer shipped to, actually, or I'm sorry, sold to. So I'm going to add the customer sold to. This is just traditional stuff. I also need the company in here. I'm going to add that to the filter. So I'm going to add the company filter here. I'm going to add the company code here because I'm going to need to, in one of my calculations, I'm going to need to use a company filter to get the total company sales, even though I'm looking at a specific customer. And I'm going to create what's called a tuple to do that. So let's go ahead and add the company in here. So, and then from a measure standpoint, I'm just going to add a regular measure here. I wanted to get, this is really needed to get sales, so let's see, it was the year-to-date sales amount was the number, so I'm going to come in here and just set this up year-to-date. You guys are probably pretty familiar with this, nothing out of the ordinary here yet, so I'm going to go in and create this as January through the current month, and that will get me year-to-date sales, so I'll say OK to that. So now I have this for all customers. So the idea was this was an individual customer scorecard. So I want to filter on these things. So I'm going to go up and I'm going to filter, well, the company. In my case, I always want company 100. Now, you might have multiple companies, and I'm going to set up my example so that it'll take advantage of that. But you could hard code, when I get to the tuple part, you could hard code 100 in there, or you can use what's called the current member. But I'm going to go ahead and filter my display for the company, so it's just company 100, and then actually I'm going to filter on it. I'm just going to pick a specific customer because the scorecard is supposed to be by customer. So I'm going to go ahead and just pick this, and that'll get my display down to a little simpler view here. So all I've got is one thing here. That's not very exciting yet. So one of the first things I wanted was year-to-date sales for the customer, so I got that. Now I want year-to-date sales. I also wanted to get, the year-to-date order counts was the other thing. So I'm going to go up to the new measure window for 6.9, click on that, and one of the first things I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and copy this particular measure. So this is kind of interesting. I've got months, years. I can come in here, and I can either do this or I can select, and I'll just come in here, and I'm going to look for order. I think I wanted order total here, actually. I think that's what I want to search on, and that'll get me pretty close to what I'm looking for. Because I want to get the total number of orders this customer has placed year-to-date, as well as total number of company orders. So I'm going to say OK with that. So I'm going to say OK. And now you'll see that copied in all of my the months, all the stuff I selected. So now I've added that measure. So now I've got, for the customer I'm filtered on, I have the actual sales year-to-date and the order total number. The total number of orders year to date. Now, the next thing I wanted to do, was add a measure for the, when I'm looking at the sales, I want to get just the sale, I want to get the sales for the total company, so I can then create a percentage, which is this customer is this, what percentage of the overall sales for the company. So I'm going to go ahead and create a, you can see up here in the new measure window, right from this window, this is a list of the measures that I have in my view right now. I can go ahead and create a calculated measure from here, and there's some new features in the create a calculated measure where I can come in and I can give this a heading right here. I don't have to go to the properties window, and this is going to be total company sales. So I'm just going to say that. I can also give this a format, and this is going to be a dollar figure in this case. So I'm going to go ahead and just give that a format. And then, so what is the formula for this? So I'm going to use a tuple. This is pretty straightforward. I'm going to say I want that. When I'm creating a hierarchy here, I want to limit this by company. So I'm going to say dot current member. So what that says is use the company dimension and use whatever the current value in company is for this measure. And then I just put a comma in here and I say which measure do I want to include. And I'm going to say actual sales amount. So I'm going to go ahead and include the actual sales. I just click on that. It adds it in there, and then I just close the, and I'm good to go. So I'm going to say OK. And you'll see that got added here. So let's just see what that looks like in the display. So a couple of things here. I wanted my measures to be on rows, so that's easy enough to change. I'm going to come here and just put them on the rows, move them down the side. And then I want company up here, and I see that I made a mistake. You can see that the total company sales and the sales for this particular customer that we're looking at, which I have right here, Auburn Providers, is the same. Not what I wanted to show you. So the the issue there is, let's go back in and look at my measure. So here's my total company measure. I'm just going to go ahead and edit from right here. The issue is it's picking up the filter that we have on customer. So what I need to tell Stratum is to ignore what's going on in the customer. So I'm just going to come up here, select the customer, and I'm going to say use what's called the default member. So that's all I do there is key that in. I'm going to just insert that up here right after the company where I have the company use the current member. I'm going to say here for the customer, use the default member. And I'll put another comma in there just to separate that. And now we're good to go. So with a little bit of luck, now that'll be, yes, you can see these two numbers have changed. How about I zoom in a little bit here so you guys can see this a little better. Whoops, that was a bit much. So there we go. So now I have these two numbers, and of course, now the next thing that we want to add, and I can just work in here, I want to add another calculated measure, which is just the percentage of these two things. So I'm going to come in here, give it a percent. This is percent of total company, right? So this is percent of total company. So I'm able to give it a caption right here. Then I'm able to give this is going to be a percentage. So again, I'll pick a percentage. Then you'll see we brought forward for 6.9 the Stratum functions. You don't have to dig down into another level, 2 levels to get this. So all the automatic functions that we provide are here. This is a simple divide. So I just want divide with 0 check. And then the division I want to do is I want to divide the the actual sales amount for this customer, which is this measure here, by the total company sales. I get that, say OK, and I will have my percentage. And I probably, in here, I can move things around as well, so I can move that around. So now I've done that for the sales. I have what I wanted in the scorecard. If you remember back to our scorecard example or what the scorecard stuff, I wanted to display both the total, the sales for this customer, as well as the percentage of company sales. So I have that number in my piece as well. So then I want to do the same thing for the order total. And why I wanted to do this twice, not so you could just watch me reiterate through this, I can now copy these calculations. So where I have a complicated calculation like this total company sales, I'm going to go in and say, just make a copy of this. And I'm going to change this to be total company orders. So I'm going to do this for orders, which is the other measure that I have here. Say OK. And the orders, by the way, is a numeric, not a dollar figure. So I want to select a different formatting. But notice it brought forward the formatting. And if you had a conditional format or any other kind of attribute or property associated with this measure, this copy feature will bring all of that forward. So as you're creating measures, this works out great. And then the last thing I want to do is this currently is running for actual sales, which we can see right here. I want to just look up for the measures, that order number, it's actually data 2. All I have to do is go in here and change this number where this says data 1. I'm just going to change that to a 2. Don't have to worry about the text or anything. That'll get figured. Stratum will figure that out for you later. So I'm going to say OK. And now I have total company orders, and I can push that down here. And then the other thing I'm going to copy is this one, so I'm just going to copy this percentage of total. So here, divide with 0 check, blah, blah, blah. The measure items I want to do, I want to divide data 2 by data 5. So again, I'm just going to go up into my piece here. I'm going to say 2 divided by 5. And I'm good. That's all I need to do. This is all the formatting. The descriptions are good, so I'm just going to say OK. And I'll drag that down here. And now if I look at this, I've got those things here. So just that added that stuff down here. So now I've got my view pretty close to what I wanted. I think we wanted a couple other things here. When I look at what they wanted, they didn't want to see the total company sales, just the percentage. So a couple of things I can do to make those so they don't display. So I want to hide those measures, basically. In the new measure window, you're able to hide things. I can come in here, and here's my total company sales. If I click that, you'll see it's gone. There's a notation down here in the bottom, a click mark. I can get those. So I'm showing the hidden measures, and I can get that back just by clicking here. And that brings that back. So that's using the new measure window to see that stuff. Another way I could do that with new functionality in 6.9 is instead of going in here, I'm going to go into the View Explorer, and you'll see now all of the things in the View Explorer have check boxes next to them. This allows me to select multiple things at a time. So I don't want to see the total company sales, so I'm going to select that. I don't want to see the total company orders. I don't want to see either of those numbers in Stratum, so I'm going to go ahead and select those. And go ahead and click up here. I can show, hide, or delete things in mass now. So you can multi-select, and I can hide both of those and say OK, and you'll see those are gone. If I was going to continue down the road of this thing, I would turn totals off here. This doesn't make sense to be summing any of this stuff. The other thing that we did want to see here was I did want to see the sales rep, so I'm going to go in here and I right-click, and now I can do add attribute relationships right off the dimension header, so I'm just going to go ahead and click that. And I think there's a primary salesperson here. I'm going to go ahead and add that. So I'm just going to say OK. And then the last thing I would do, I was going to spiff this up a little bit. Obviously, I'd have a lot more measures listed here. But the other thing I would do is I would go and I would change these headings here. These are kind of long. So this is a new feature that was in 6 dot something. I don't remember which version, but just to kind of show you guys how that works, I would come in and I would say for the sold too long description, I'm actually going to change this is the customer. I'm going to call this the customer name. And I'm going to change the primary salesperson, just say rep or something like that. So I'll come in here and change that to rep. And now I've got that. So there you go. That's just a tour of using some other new features that we have in Stratum, which were the new measure window, which I, by the way, I use Stratum every day quite a bit. And you can select from this drop down here and get things. You can also click on this. This is generally how I work with measures now. You can have this come up. When you add a calculated measure, there's a nice feature here. If you're trying to remember how to do something, you can go to examples. And this brings up the new help. So help was enhanced. The search here now does a more context-sensitive search, so it's much better in finding things. In this case, this also, when you clicked examples there, it took me to a context. It was context-sensitive and brought me into a bunch of examples in the help that show you how to create some more complex calculated measures. And this stuff is all in the help, so that was all updated as well. And, of course, you can see all the videos as well here. This is a list of all the videos we have available in terms of different stuff you can see and how to do things in Stratum. So let's see. That was a bunch of stuff about the export to Excel and the calculated or the new measure stuff. And a couple other things I just wanted to talk about that are new in Stratum 6.9. Again, this document's great. I'm back in the What's New document. I showed you the broadcast server export to Excel option. We looked at that. Closer look at version 6.9. We did the copy measures, toolbar, shortcuts, that kind of stuff. All that's in there. We talked about that. I did want to, and then we talked about the View Explorer, and a note on the View Explorer. So when we talked about the View Explorer and the ability to multi-select and things, note that these things have all become, these windows are slightly different. They now have little grippers on them here. So you can actually, in a touch environment, you can drag this stuff around. These little grids or these dots right here allow you with your finger to drag those around and move them. So you can now, in a touch environment, very easily add measures, filter on things. Over here, if you open the View Explorer, whether you're here or in a touch environment, you can click I can click to select all. I can deselect. I can select individual things, and then I can touch these options up here or click on those things for stuff to happen. So this is all the objective here being to help people that are using, say, Surface, like a Microsoft Surface or a iPad, something like that, to look at Stratum. You can do that stuff there as well. So jumping back to that doc, just to talk, there was one other thing I want. Oh, yeah. So the options for treatment of time here. This is unrelated to what I've been talking about. This is a new feature. If you guys remember a couple releases ago, I know if I don't know if Elise is on the phone, but anyways, some people we were dealing with the issue of in the first month of the year, if in a new year, if you had your time ranges set up, so you were seeing, say, let's just say it was January through, you had your your from and to column set up to be the 2 month was the current month, and then the the from month was the current month, and the 2 month was, say, previous. Well, at the first month of the year, that's an invalid year. That's an invalid selection because the month would be January, and you want to see the previous month, and that would be January to December, and that's for the previous year, which the from and to doesn't work out there. So we changed that so that it would automatically go back a year. Not everybody was happy with that, and so what we did was we made it, and then the trick was once you got in there, then you couldn't edit those changes. So we opened that up so you can now edit that stuff on that. So anyone that understood what I was just talking about, you had the issue, and we've done something to make that better for you. If you didn't understand what I was talking about, you probably haven't run into this problem, and it's probably not a concern for you. So there you go. So that's kind of the things in 6.9 that are new. Overall, most of the development effort there was spent on the new export to Excel and designing that window for maintenance. By the way, in this document that is the new releases, at the bottom of these, there is, so you're aware, a summary of what's happened in the last 3, 4, 5 releases. So you can kind of get the highlights for everything that was added and how to take advantage of it. And you can see, you can link off to the What's New video for these if you want to get a quick run through these videos. We do a really good job on these, I think. They're just quick highlights of what's new and how you can take advantage of it, or you can get the document specific to that release. For, in this case, 6.8 is what I'm looking at right now. That's kind of the 6.9 stuff, and what I thought I would do is talk a little bit now. I'm just going to jump back over to my PowerPoint real quick and talk about a little bit of our product direction and where we're going after 6.9, what's in 7.0, and where we're going beyond that. And then we've got a little bit of time. I'll probably have a little time left, so I'll open the phones up after that. So first of all, just product direction in general. So to talk to you guys a little bit about that. So our focus with the 6.x series of releases had been very much based on experiences we had in meeting with our users. Often we would go out and do user reviews, which those of you that have heard me talk about this, I've pitched this before, but the idea being where if you'd like, at our cost, we'll come out and sit with your user community, a small group of users, and actually watch them use Stratum. We don't want to have a big group. We just want to sit with 1 or 2 users at a time, and we do 3 or 4 sessions throughout the day and let the user drive. And we look at how they use Stratum and what they're doing and where they might be having some challenges or how we might do some things better to make things more intuitive or easier. And that's really been the UI and intuitive base. Then we've done some things for performance on the back end, and the technology updates. That'll continue no matter what we're doing with Stratum as new feature function becomes available to us from a technology standpoint. We'll take advantage of it, and if we can improve performance, we'll continue to do that. But the focus is shifting a little bit. We'll still continue to bleed some stuff in on the UI as we hear back from customers, and the offer for user reviews continues to be out there. But as you look forward, and I begin to talk a little bit about what's going to be in 7.0, we're focused on a strategy we have called user-controlled data, and the idea is to begin to let the user community or the analyst community versus the IT community control some of the data that's in Stratum. And that's going to start with the ability for a user to kick off a data copy, and the business case behind data copy is the idea that you might want to copy last year's sales into a category in Stratum to begin to create your sales plan for the next year. And while you're doing that, maybe for Region 1, you want to have a bump of 1%. For Region 2, you want to have a 2% bump. And Region 3, you want to have a bump of 5%. And Region 4 is going to be down by a point. So you can do separate copies to factor in changes as you copy the data over. And this allows a user now to copy data maybe in their own sandbox or into a working plan, so they can take advantage of that data. That adds the infrastructure for us to be able for a user to kick off the ability to move information from somewhere, in the case of data copy and what's going to be in 7.0, from Stratum to Stratum. But then ultimately what you'll see is an integration of, as we move down the road, of being able to, say, move data from a spreadsheet up into Stratum and import that data, and a user will be able to do that. Now, obviously there's controls and security on this, and the idea would be that a user might have a sandbox or a category they can import and play with, but they would not be able to impact your standard, or call it your corporately controlled data, which would be like your sales data. So they're not going to be able to walk over that data unless you open that up to them, but I'm going to assume you would not do that. But this is where now you could bring in, say, data from social or a plan that you have in Excel, and someone wants to import that into Stratum so they can do easily do comparative analysis. Maybe you've got some market level data, safety data, all kinds of things, or things we see that people collect in Excel spreadsheets. So where we're headed is, if I was to use some of the terms that are current out in the press and for the industry, the citizen data scientist being able to bring in more kinds of data. What that'll do on the back end for those on the tech side, this will actually open up some new storage formats for us on the relational side that'll be more accessible than our current header detail relationships from other tools that you might use. And this is also opening the door for us to begin to integrate machine learning and AI into some of the data in Stratum, so to give us a storage format that's conducive to taking advantage of some of that stuff. So that's one thing. User-controlled data is a big direction for us over the next year. And then in addition to that, master data management. So we get a lot of questions about this, and this is only going to get exacerbated by letting people import data that's not coming from your standard systems. But the idea that you want to create a new master file, say a new roll-up for products or customers, or you want to manage one of the roll-ups for products outside of what's in the ERP system. So a lot of stuff here where you want to manage data, what we call master data, and add new levels or new roll-ups that don't exist naturally from your ERP system. That are maybe they're roll-ups that are very specific to analysis, but not really used transactionally or in the transaction system for any kind of processing. So that's the other thing. And then the last topic on this that I wanted to talk about was just corporately controlled data, which is be kind of the data you have today that's vetted and you guys trust that's in Stratum. We want to make that even easier to get that data in, and we've come up with some different solutions to allow someone to have, instead of using a product like SSIS, which is probably the most common thing we see people use, using a product that is accessible over the web and could be used by a data scientist to actually begin to collect data, say, from your ERP system, et cetera, with more controls and more options for logic and control on that data. So this is where we're headed with some of this stuff. We're trying to find a balance between corporately controlled, vetted data that you don't want people to impact, but at the same time making it easier for your analysts, your citizen data scientists to be able to get data into Stratum and mash data up with other data that's in Stratum and extract value from that.